Today's guest is someone I connected with through social media. A lovely example of how meaningful online connections can be. A holistic business and leadership coach, and the host of Psychology of the Heart. I'm looking forward to diving into the heart of self-leadership and growth today. You're listening to Connected with Eva, the podcast on human connection. I hope you enjoy. I'm so happy to have you on today's episode, and I'd love if you could introduce yourself and your podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Aziza. I'm a consultant and coach. I specifically work with heart-led women who are business owners or career-driven women, and they're looking to find more alignment in their life, whether that be through the way that they communicate, the way they honor their rhythm, or the way that they decide to lead operations in their business or for their team, and really about how they show up in authentic leadership, all about the strategy and the soul when it comes to leading life that you always wanted to live. And yeah, owner of Psychology of the Heart. I also have a podcast. So yes, I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. You know, when you say living aligned, creating a life that's aligned, a lot of people say that. And I find to actually live in that alignment, it could be quite tricky because we all have these horrible old patterns that are very difficult to break. So I thought that it would be a good thing to talk about that.
I believe that the universe, God, or whatever you would like to call it, that the higher power of where we're existing together tends to share similar themes in life. And today I met with so many different people, and we actually talked about what it feels like in that aha moment when you realize that, wait, what I'm doing right now doesn't feel aligned with who I am or where I want to go. And how when you realize that, it can be very terrifying, but also when you decide to take that shift and make that step, that it also feels really relieving that you finally listened to yourself. Living in alignment really is about listening to your inner wisdom and your intuition. And that's a very intimate and specific journey for each individual on this planet. It looks so different for everyone. And I think that all in all, like when you're living in that aligned space, it also helps you become like a better person to connect with others because you allowed yourself to listen to you first, if that makes sense.
To have a good connection with someone else, a meaningful connection, you need to know authenticity and to recognize it in yourself. And if you don't do that, how can you authentically connect with others? But talking about that aha moment, I remember a few months ago, it was suddenly this realization that I'm happy being where I am today and doing what I'm doing. And it took a lot of time. And like you say, it's scary at the beginning because you're responsible for yourself as a human being. And that could be quite terrifying, right? Because to be truly free, you need to be fully autonomous and fully take charge of yourself as a human being. There was this funny post on Instagram or GIF where it says, I'm an adult, but I'd like to speak to an adultier adult.
I actually speak to this a lot with my clients and in my work because I think it comes up in so many different ways when your career or your work takes up a lot of your time. And it can feel like when you acknowledge that there's like misalignment in your life, I think it's a moment of either running away from it and just pretending like it's not there. Or like you said, it's when you realize that you're an autonomous human being and you're an adult, that you are literally in control of everything that has happened. Like that some part of you had an influence in where you're at in life. Some things do just happen and that's life, but there is a part of us that has made choices and we've done things and chose to do them, and we're in this space because of that. And when you realize you're in misalignment because of that, it's really heavy, and it does lead to a lot of anxiety or depression or just feeling really, I guess, dysregulated in the nervous system. You're just like, oh my God, I just realized all this. What do I do now? I always say, like, when you have that aha moment, it's not about how do I change my life really quickly? Like, now let's just shift everything in my life to be better, it takes like small intentional steps because I don't think anyone chooses misalignment. Like people aren't like living life and choosing to do things that don't feel good over and over and over again because they want to. It just happens because maybe for me, I was a chronic people pleaser. So I just wanted people to be happy. But it turned into me being really miserable because I just kept making the same choice over and over again. So sometimes I just feel like the moment at the same time where you're like, oh my gosh, I just realized I'm living in misalignment is the same as realizing how it takes so many little steps to get there.
And that's the thing. It's also about these patterns because that's how we've grown up. That's how we've lived our entire lives. So it's very difficult to break the loop. Also, I feel like it's quite addictive because our brains find it very soothing. Sometimes things that are not good for us could be soothing. So what do you think could be a good thing to do to stop the pattern, maybe gently at the beginning?
What you just spoke to is very it's very important because it's so true that when you're breaking that loop, it almost is addictive. Your body and your nervous system, like we're all energy. So naturally we're going to crave familiar. So if you created a life that's in misalignment and you're not feeling authentic, that is a life energetically and nervous system wise you created. So that's familiar and it feels good to an extent because you know what to expect. When you start shifting, which is why I said if you just like say you eat poorly, don't get enough sleep, and you don't talk to anyone, and then tomorrow you're like, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to change my diet, and I'm going to make a ton of friends, you're going to feel worse. Like you genuinely will feel worse. And so I think, like you said, to break that loop, it isn't about drastic change. It isn't about like shifting your life 360, but it's really about making those really small steps toward who you want to be or like the life that you want. And so I think it just depends on how you visualize that life. But I know for me, it kind of went into, especially with when it comes to work, is just honoring boundaries where I could. If I was an employee, right, I would, end my day when I ended my day. If someone asked me for something at 5 p.m. and it was time to go home, it's like, nope, I can't do that. Sorry. And then as an employee or as an employer where I have my own business and I don't have a team yet, but as having my own business, I think it's important me to continue to do that. Like at 4 p.m., if I said I'm going to be done, I'm done for the day. And if a client reaches out to me, I don't see it because it's 4 p.m. and I told myself I'm taking a break. And just taking that one step of saying, today I end at this time, I think is a good start. And then maybe the next couple of weeks you work on that. It's not like that one day you're going to change too, because there's been times where like I said that for a whole week, never did it. And then 2 weeks later, though, I got into the habit of doing it. And then I feel like you could take the next step where it's like, maybe I won't work on Fridays, or maybe I'll go out with my friends on Fridays after work. So it's really about those small steps. It could be as simple as sleeping in for 5 minutes, like it doesn't have to be really drastic.
The less you do, the easier the process is. But sometimes life throws things at you because I'm self-employed as well. And normally it's okay to not read emails or reply to messages at odd hours of the night. But there was a specific client who would message me any odd time. Maybe it was like 12 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning. And they kind of expected a reply immediately. And that was just one specific person. But sometimes things happen and you're like, okay, so how do I work around this? You have to start allowing imperfection in your life to move forward or to improve, because nothing's ever perfect. And it's something I've suffered with or struggled with as a concept. Even when I started the podcast, I'm like, oh no, but this edit is not perfect. But nothing is ever perfect. And sometimes you have to accept that it will be 70% or 60% in that specific instance. And to be able to continue doing what you do and not give up, because a lot of people give up, you have to accept imperfection.
Yeah, once you lean into the idea that it's not going to be perfect, you have so much more space to be the person you want to become, because no one, like, even if you admire someone and you can think of them now, they weren't who they are now by just shifting overnight. It
Yeah.
took a lot of time to build that person, and so why should you be perfect in the next minute if it's something that you need to work on, and that's fine. I think what you mentioned though about, like, say you have like that one client that just is expecting that response. I feel that it's interesting when it comes to like misalignment in life, or like when you feel like you're not being authentic, you not only are you, when it comes to relationships, are you kind of creating a habit and familiar life for you, but you're also doing that for everyone around you too. And it's like you create an expectation of how you show up with others in your relationship. And I think that's where people can either make or break an existing relationship, is that if they decide to shift themselves and be more authentic, then that might not align with the person that you already have an existing relationship with, because they already have a certain set of expectations on how you show up, but it's in your misaligned way. So if you're like a people pleaser and you're like, "Oh yeah, I don't really want to answer you right away anymore because I have boundaries," then that person's going to be like, "What do you mean? Like that's what you do. Like this is how our relationship goes." And I think it's such an imperfect process because of how that dynamic works. You're not only affecting yourself but other people, and so it feels like so much is changing over time because you have to kind of weed out all of the inauthentic moments or energies, whether that be people or, the way you eat or your routine or how you work or even what you do for work. So it's such a process, I feel like. Yeah.
Sometimes I find if I concentrate on one part of it, maybe work, for example, something else might be lacking because I'm like,
Mm,
okay, so this one thing is doing well, so the other thing can, I don't know, stay in the
right.
sidelines and just marinate. I don't know how to concentrate on everything at the same time, and that feels a little overwhelming sometimes.
That's so true. I think that is what balance is though. I feel like when I speak to some clients or even people when they talk about balance, it is some people believe it doesn't exist or some people believe it's the duality of both. And I think I'm that person that believes that what you just described is balance, because there's always going to be something that requires our focus more so than something else. And that's the balance of things. Like maybe work is going really well, but like personal life isn't, or personal life is going really great and then work isn't, or sometimes it's both, but then something new comes up and it's really great. And so I feel like that's actually the balance of life. I think it's really what you said about accepting that life in general is just imperfect. Once you kind of acknowledge and accept that, then I feel like you can be more authentically you, because nothing's perfect. So you might as well just do what you feel is aligned for yourself and live that life, because nothing will ever, whether you decide to be what quote unquote people think is perfect or be, living a life that's very performative, still things in your life could go wrong. So why not enjoy your life and live in a way that feels really good for you? Then it doesn't matter if things go right or wrong, because at least you're doing what feels aligned for you. If you think of it in that way, where it's not as heavy as a concept, I feel like.
I love that. But you know what? I've met so many people who they'll say that, and then at the same time, they will expect perfection and really suffer if life is not perfect. And obviously, suffer all the time because life is never perfect. Who taught us that things should be perfect? Was it movies? I don't know.
I mean, it's a great question. I feel like it's like the psychology of things where people are wonder if it's nature versus nurture. I personally think that it's a little bit of both, but I also think it's really how we grow up. But then you could argue society is created first. So then how we grow up is based on our guardians' experience with, society. So I think it's definitely why like these types of podcasts and conversations are really important, because it really helps kind of break that idea mentality and help people be even more autonomous in figuring out, wait, there isn't this idea of perfect, but maybe there is this idea of being excellent and trying my best and doing the best that I can in the moment that I'm in now. So
I love that. This should be on a quote. Let's be excellent. It feels so much more achievable, doesn't it? There's this soothing tone to it
It does.
almost when you say let's be excellent. Because when you say let's be perfect, obviously that's impossible. When you say let's be excellent, it feels achievable and also it feels uplifting.
Yeah, definitely uplifting where you feel like, oh, that sounds like the best version of me without making me feel bad that I don't achieve it every day. Especially as women, our cycles influence so much of our rhythm that excellence for women is so different than for excellence for men. So I think honoring where you're at in life might be different. You know, excellence is always seen differently. And I think that's why it feels really uplifting. It does. It is really hard to think that though. Like, even though I'm on here saying all these things, I do think, oh, but I really want to be like perfect or really good at this one thing, but I'm thinking perfection. And it's just undoing those thoughts and habits in that moment. Like me acknowledging it, or anyone that's listening to this is acknowledging it is like the first step. And it's really uncomfortable. But once you do that, then you can start making change.
The thing with perfection as well is that it's because we as human beings need to strive towards something. So if we were trying to accomplish something that's not perfect, there would be no drive. We want perfection because we want to achieve something.
I think I think too that there's like the duality of things where it's really great to have that drive. Because when you think of perfection, it does give you more that fire beneath you is really like, oh, that's really what I'm gonna try and do or aim for. But then when you think of excellence, I think it's like the softer version of that. And maybe for some people it doesn't provide that power to like go and set forth with that drive. But I think it might not even be the words, but it's just knowing that sometimes you can aim for perfection that will be a different type of excellence. And then when you're aiming for excellence, it might be a different type of greatness, you know, like there are different levels of things. So I think, like in what you shared, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's just that perfectionism actually can mean a lot of different things to people. And in some people, it might mean excellence. But I think it's honoring the fact that even perfectionism has its moments of it just wavers. There's a yin and yang of, you know, those moments of where it just feels really great to be aiming for it and then it doesn't. And when it doesn't, that's when you aim for excellence. Maybe it's just, you know, accepting that.
I love that.